Okay, sounds good.
All right. Yep, here we go.
All right, hey Becky. So this is take two, part one, and there's my daughter. Welcome by. Why don't you tell us who you are, your full name, background, so we know what's going on here.
Okay, I am Chris's old schoolmate. I went to school with Mr. Perio and I graduated the class before him. And that was in Chattanooga. And I am American Japanese and I now live in Hong Kong. So I've lived in a few countries when I was growing up and now as an adult, lived most of my adult life in Asia. So I teach second grade at an English speaking school. My husband is he's a pastor, support staff pastor at our church, also English speaking. My kids go to British schools, and my oldest, the 16-year-old, goes to an American school, all in Hong Kong.
Okay. How long did you attend Grace for?
Since the year after it opened, so that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
So you did 9th through 12th? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was there 9th, 10th, 11th, because we moved from New Jersey
Yeah.
after
Oh,
grade
yeah.
here. And
That's
I didn't get to
right.
graduate. Yeah, I didn't get to graduate, so I was kind of bummed out about that. But
Oh,
yeah. Those are probably the three of my best years of my life. I have to say that I had a blast with Grace. I really did.
it was a
Just a lot of
special place because it was
it.
like small and new, and they cared
It,
about us.
it really. You're right. That's it. And do you still talk to anybody from Grace?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. Like, okay, do you remember Stephanie and Melissa?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we like meet up every couple of years.
That's awesome.
We met up in New York City this summer and we were on the Today Show. We had so much
Oh,
fun.
nice. Oh, yeah. I remember seeing
Yeah.
that a little bit. That's cool.
Then yeah, we meet up every couple of years when I'm in America. I don't go
Yeah.
to America every year. So when I do and I have a chance to step away from my family, we'll catch up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So we're talking to Becky today because Becky is in Hong Kong, where they have had school shutdowns now for what you're in week 7 or week 8 or somewhere in
Just
there?
finished 7 weeks.
Okay, just finished 7 weeks. And so some of my students had several questions about that. And so I wanted to just kind of answer those questions and also get your perspective, because one of the things that you said the last time we talked was that be prepared to deal with this longer than what you think it's going to be. Um, our government keeps saying, just stay in for 15 days and, school will be closed until the end of, March. And now some states are already pushing it further back. And so I just want to get your thoughts on how you as a teacher and a parent has handled that.
Yeah, so we first found out at the end of January during a holiday. We had Chinese New Year holiday, so we have a week off with no school, and we found out that our schools were going to be closed for 2 weeks, and we were like, "What? Oh man!" And so 2 weeks is like a chunk of time, and we knew that we could not just give worksheets to the kids or like band-aid work. It was going to be full-on curriculum because it was 2 legit weeks, and nobody wants to lose the rest of their summer or any other holiday. So we full on did real school. Well, just as soon as that started, we found out it was going to be another month. And then today we got new news that there's no end in sight. So
Oh, wow.
last time I talked to you, I mean, every
Yeah.
day news changes. Like in America, Europe, every single day there's like a whole different set of information to adjust to. So
Right.
today we found out from our executive leader, it's called the chief executive, that there's no date. They're not going to give us a date anymore. Our last target date was April 20th to start school, and now
Okay.
that's abolished. So we're just living in limbo, and
Wow.
it's because of the nature of the virus. So you have to
Right.
you cannot just predict like, oh, in a month or in 2 weeks, because you have to see how people handle the virus. If people
Right.
handle the virus the way that the medical experts are advising, then it will take its course. And it's a long course. It's like 6 weeks, I think, at the best. We've already gone through that, but we got a second wave of the virus this week. So we now have to adjust because of people's behaviors. So yeah, nobody can predict for you guys in the States what this is going to look like, because you have to see how people manage it. And if
Right.
people manage it the way that the experts are advising, and they don't know either. I mean, the experts are still figuring it out. Like they're still
Right.
learning how long the virus lasts on places, and what the symptoms are, and like what the before the onset of symptoms, how long are you contagious, like all of that is still being gathered.
Mhm.
So nobody can predict fully. It's not like a meteorologist is out there saying you have this much time and then this is going to happen. So
Yeah.
definitely it's longer than 2 weeks, longer than 4 weeks.
So
Could
how have
be
your
2 months.
kids so how have your kids handled the major adjustment of being home all the time?
We all, well, okay, so some families are like, oh, it's so great because their schools are just not doing that much. I think a lot of schools, for equity, for fairness and equality, you can't expect a full curriculum to roll out. But for us in Hong Kong, we fully expect an entire similar sort of curriculum to roll out for the kids. Especially, I'm working in a private international school, and
Mhm.
parents are still paying full school fees, which are very expensive school fees. So we are running a proper program, and my kids hate it. My class isn't that happy. My own children. It's like all the schoolwork, the hard part, without the social aspect. No recess,
Mhm.
no lunch. It's just all the curriculum parts with your
And
parents.
yeah, and how are they doing without that major social aspect?
Well, we're not housebound, so
Right.
we go out after school. We can play with other kids. Can have sleepovers. My daughter just came home from a sleepover, and
See, that's crazy because that's being completely like the social distancing thing right now. That's the word here. That's the major buzzword of social distancing. 6 feet away, and unless you're with immediate family, the answer is no right now here.
yeah, there's a reason that you guys are in that crisis point that we're not.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
we
You.
have known about the virus since January, and we've
Mhm.
handled it in a way that as soon as we know a case is there, then that's contained. And
Right.
so everybody else can kind of go on as usual. So no school, no churches, no major groups of anything connected with schools. But outside of that, small businesses, restaurants are open. I just got back from a restaurant tonight. It wasn't that full, but it was operating. Um, we run on public transport. Everything's just kind of just slower, but it's all still there because we are containing it. And when we go
Right.
out, everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone's extremely careful with hand hygiene, touching your face, touching items. Um, so you guys are in more of a crisis mode. Like I took some notes. I was looking. You guys have 11 million people in Ohio.
Hmm.
Your cases started coming in March this
Yes.
month, and you've already
Yep.
got 169 cases
Yep.
today.
Yes.
We have 8 million people in a small city, one of your cities. We have
Yep.
8 million people. We've had it since January, and we have 273 cases.
Okay. Which
So
is more than it was the other day when we talked, isn't it?
it's jumped hugely since I talked to you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so
Wow.
we were hovering at 120 cases for 6 weeks, and
Yeah,
it was
that's right.
contained. Everyone was doing a great job. We're all like working hard to keep everything running from home.
Yeah.
But we had a situation happen, and it all just went out of.
Yeah.
It's actually going to get worse for us in the next 2 weeks because of certain
Yeah.
people's behaviors.
Well, and from living here that spring break's a huge deal, and there are a lot of people here who are still traveling throughout the states. I think it's going to make it worse here too,
Yeah.
long run.
Yeah.
I think Kansas, I think California is considering canceling schools for the year already. Most colleges here have canceled for the year. They sent everybody home. All spring sports are basically canceled, whether it's club or high school.
Yeah, because
Um,
your all's trajectory just went like this. Psh,
yes, it's
yeah,
spiking.
because
Yeah.
people didn't take it seriously at first.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. So let's see here. You already answered that question from Josie. I didn't answer this the other day. How has it affected people's mental health, or do you know that?
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah,
We have like you guys are housebound in a way. Certain people are
yeah,
housebound and restaurants are
yeah,
closed and you can't go to the movie theater and stuff. And we have that. But we are trapped. We feel trapped sometimes. So we
yeah.
are in one city and it's our whole world. Like if we leave our city, that's international travel.
Mm,
And we
wow.
can't do that now. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
we can. It's really, really tough. So most countries have shut their borders to us as we are neighboring to China. So there's only one place I think that we can go right now. It's this other city next to us called Macau. It used to be a Portuguese territory. It's
Hmm.
also now part of China. But um, I had a conference in Taiwan. I wasn't allowed to go. I had a vacation booked in 2 weeks to Japan. That flight's canceled. So we kind of got panicky because we're trapped, feeling trapped. And
Right.
then we also got the shopping panic sprees that were happening, and we couldn't get
Hmm.
rice, we couldn't get toilet paper, we couldn't get anything that would be a cleansing product. And
Yeah.
so for 2 weeks we couldn't buy anything. And it kind of made you like, you were like, nope, I'm okay, I'm fine, you stay cool. And then you panic. You kind of
Yeah.
get like, what if we can't get anything, and oh man,
Yeah.
you kind of get anxious because some people are out there buying all of it or hoarding so that they can resell at exorbitant prices.
Hmm.
So even if you're a calm, set person, it still flares up in you. And then you have to like recenter yourself and figure out like, okay, what are the things I know I can control? What are the
Right.
things that are not, that are true? So like you look at the science, the actual numbers, the where are the locations of these cases. So you kind of have to recenter yourself and recheck yourself and get out in nature. So you guys
Right.
can still get out in nature. That's not a problem, right? You can go somewhat.
Although, do you guys use Celsius or Fahrenheit there?
Everything's
Temperature?
Celsius
So
metric.
it's Celsius.
Yeah.
So it's -2 today here. Um, it was snow flowing earlier. It was 70 yesterday morning.
But you're in
70
a t-shirt
degrees.
and your background looks so good.
Well, listen, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm inside, so I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you dealt with all the hoarding, which we're dealing with. We had to go to the store yesterday to get me a prescription, and it was just insane. Lines, just crazy. Um, what would your recommendations be for like my teacher friends who may watch this? What would your recommendations be for them as they go online and prepare for what they think is going to be a week or two? What's your recommendation for them?
Well, it depends on if they're private or public, right? Is there a big difference?
Uh, yes and no. The public schools are also going all online. Private schools, I don't know. I'm not sure how much of a difference there is, to be honest with you. I know some of the public schools are already online and going. Where they're giving us a full week next week of extra spring break, basically, to go online. So
Wow, that's nice.
we'll see. We had 5 snow days that we did not use this year, so we're
Oh,
using those as an extra spring break, which is kind of nice. So
well, it's just really nice to be able to like gather your stuff and figure out what you're going to do because we didn't have that. We
wow,
um, we had we were on our proper Chinese New Year holiday, and then as soon as that ended, most of us were not even in the country, so we couldn't like really, I didn't have a computer with me where I was in Thailand and was hanging out with elephants. So it wasn't until I got back that I had to just figure it out right then and there and roll it out. So my principal gave us really good advice. He said, just know that this is going to be way harder, take much more time, and it's because it's just like you're switching out how you normally do everything. You can't do
right,
it that way. You have to do it in a different way
yep,
so that kids can access it easily. So it's way more work. It just is. It's like you have to figure out in your day, how are you going to block out non-school time, because
yeah,
you spend all this time making videos to demonstrate the teaching and explicit teaching. Then you set the work, and then you have all these new platforms to use,
hmm,
and you try to start off with the platforms that your students are already strong in, then
right,
later bring in the other new ones. But just
good
start off
advice.
with Google Classroom, because I
Yeah,
think most everybody knows that. They know how to
yeah,
do slides and docs and sharing. I mean, I teach 7-year-olds and they know that.
yeah,
But as they got used to it, we brought in other platforms that were better, that were
yeah,
easier for them to use, but like it not on the first week. And
right,
then so by the time you actually set the work and they start to do the work, then they start to turn it into you. It can start rolling in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock.
mm,
So you have to just block, you know, when is your time not to look at school, because your email's always
right,
going to be coming. And it's important too, like we're from a school background where we don't have grades. So we give feedback to kids. And the
Uh,
feedback, because you're not there with them, it's so much more work, because if you're there in the classroom with the kids, you give the feedback one-on-one to them. You like can go through their work and you can point out things that they did well and areas to improve. But now you have to like explicitly write it out to them one by one for every, everything. So
yeah,
the amount of feedback you give, and the quality of feedback you give to students will then inform how they should improve and grow. Like you really do need to be teaching, right? So
right. That's a good point too, because the other hard thing is, and you know this, but I'm sure better than I do, is that tone is tougher in writing than it is in if you're just in the classroom saying something, because of our eyes and the way we say things, inflection, and in a typed feedback, there can be a lot of misunderstandings. So that it's got to be really well done.
and the feedback,
Um,
because of that, needs to be very positive. You really need to
right,
focus on, you did this right, you did this right, you did this right.
right,
Because they're at home on their own. Their parents are
sure,
probably frustrated with them and don't know how to access everything.
yep,
And you don't want to like add to that stress.
right.
You want to build the kids up so they can feel like, I can do this, I got that.
You know, it's funny. I recorded my first history lesson for my eighth grade class yesterday. I wanted to do it so that I could have my supervisor look at it, make sure it was okay. And I did a 10-minute lesson. And it's funny because, you know, if you sit in a classroom and teach, I can do that and it's not a problem. But when you start to condense something to a very short lesson that needs to be very clear and concise, you realize sometimes I realize how wordy I can be without even realizing it,
True.
you know?
Yeah. I'm actually training teachers on that right now, to be
Are
very
you?
efficient with your words, and
Yeah.
maybe at the beginning make out a script just so that you know that you are using the
Great point.
time well and being very very explicit, specific, and concise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really important. Let's see here. I think you told us this last time, but again, since we're doing this over again, all of your students would have internet access. They probably all have a computer. Is that correct?
They all have to have a device. So I teach
Okay.
second grade, but they don't have to have a laptop, but they should have an iPad. And if they don't have one device per child at their family, our school will give them a Chromebook to use during this time.
Okay.
So most high school students, international school, they're all required to buy a MacBook Pro. So my daughters were, they had everything already. Everything's online for them anyway. They don't have textbooks in Hong Kong. Everything
Wow.
on the MacBook Pro, everything is online already. So that was really seamless for them. For us in the lower years, we are more hands-on and face to face. So we gave them Chromebooks to use at home if they don't have
Okay.
anything.
So for my audience who is here, and by the way, this is 10:30 in the morning for me. It's 10:30 at night for Mrs. Is it Mrs. Chow? How do you say your last name?
Yeah, ciao.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 10:30 at night there for her. So in other words, Hong Kong is there we
Now
go.
it's nighttime.
So Hong Kong is a very, very modern city. And so that's important for people to understand as well.
It's very
Uh,
wealthy, and the focus is very Asian in that education is really important. So I never really have behavior problems in my classrooms. Like the
okay.
kids are motivated by peer pressure. They just really want to do well all the time. So yeah, like look at this city behind me. It's extremely
Yeah.
international. My kids in my class are from probably 16 different countries.
Wow.
And at the beginning of the online learning, everyone was scattered all over the world. And so they just stayed where they were. I had kids in Germany, France, Japan, Malaysia. They were everywhere. And then some of them came back to Hong Kong because their parents had to get back to work. But a lot of them just stayed where they were. And so when I would set the work for them, they were at different time zones, turning in the work like at 2 a.m. or wherever they were.
Yeah.
But every day we have two meets in the primary level. Like with high school kids, they keep their schedule. They keep a live schedule. So if it's science time, they meet with their science teacher, and he teaches on Zoom, which is the platform we're using now. For me, I just meet with the kids every morning and every afternoon. And sometimes we have little one-on-one meets or help times to support them. But school is important to everybody here.
Yeah.
So they're all doing their work.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that that it's a culture that is very respectful of each other, isn't it?
It's a culture that's not individualistic. So it's not about me and what I want to do and what my rights are. It's about what I should do for everybody else's sake and how I
Okay.
can be contributing member of this group. And um, it's it's like frustrating for me because I am very American and I have to be careful not to be that mentality of, well, I think this, so I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. I can't
Yeah.
do that. My husband helps me keep in check with that. I don't believe in masks, surgical masks, because I know they only work for 3 hours. They have to be fitted just right. I hate wearing
Yeah.
masks because I just don't think the science is there to
Yeah.
support that it'll last me all day. But in
Yeah.
Hong Kong, if you don't wear a mask when you're out on the train or you're in a shopping center, people feel disrespected that you are being cavalier and careless about their health because you could
Hmm.
be a virus carrier and you could be breathing in their zone, and
Hmm.
because we're all super close to each other.
Right.
So yeah, we went out for dinner tonight. I wore a mask just because I need to be respectful in the culture.
Yeah. So when you get to the restaurant, I assume you take it off when you get to your table. Is that what you do?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? Like,
No, it doesn't make any sense. That's what I was
yeah,
wondering. So
yeah, take it off and smoke and eat, and yeah.
what was the cuisine of the cuisine of the night for you guys? What'd you guys eat?
Oh, we had American food.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Kevin asked me to ask you, one of my eighth graders, about people whose jobs have been affected by the virus. Are they getting some kind of compensation?
So, as most of our businesses are still going, it's
Okay.
not as bad as in the US.
Okay.
It is bad, but it's not as bad. So, like, if you're in industries where people are staying away, like, I don't know, in my world, I think of like the manicurist or the facial or,
Yeah.
like those kind of people, they're struggling.
Yeah.
Taxi drivers are struggling. But all the other businesses are still going, but at a lower. It's very tough financially.
Yeah.
It's a mess right now. The economy is lower than it's ever been before. The
Mhm.
government is, even before this started, we had a couple weeks of unrest,
Mhm.
people protesting, and so the government is trying to do its best to help and keep morale up. So they've given every family money, one-off money for every student they have that's enrolled in school from kindergarten to university. So I get 3 of those sets of cash donations. Every single adult who's a permanent resident or a resident gets the money too. So I get a $20,000. What is that? Let me calculate.
It's
Uh,
not the same as American money.
is not the same. Yeah.
No.
Oh, 2,500 US. So my husband
Okay.
and I each get like but actually our taxes are really low, so that'll help pay for the taxes too.
Yeah.
So
And just so
there's
people
something.
understand, because you mentioned to me before that you live in the sixth floor of a building, right? And you have, like, would you say 900 square feet
Yeah, and
was
there's
it six of
six
you?
of us. Yeah,
Six of us.
yeah,
So
yeah.
for all my American friends who are fussing about being locked in their house, she's in a basically an apartment on the sixth floor of the building. And before you said your building was what, 52nd floor?
Yes.
Wow, that's
52nd
insane.
floor. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
What was I gonna say? Oh, another thing that's really great about where we live, that helps with the whole coronavirus is we have socialized medicine. So anybody can go to get treated, get tested, any kind of medical thing that you require, it's basically free. So
hmm
we don't worry about the funds for that. So it's I don't know. It's not as
yeah,
scary to get sick here. You
yeah.
will get top quality care and the government will pay for it.
Testing here has been a problem. And I know of at least one person that has been told they probably have it. They will not get tested, stay home. So the numbers here are going to be extremely skewed. I have a feeling.
But I
And
think that's the case for all over the world. I don't think
I
we
think
can
so
look at
too.
the hard numbers and say that that's the number because we don't
Yeah,
know that China's really being able to report the amount of
right,
deaths. They don't know
right.
who's in provinces and countrysides that died from it.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
and then the other problem is this: is what about the young people that probably have it, and they have a mild case, so they're asymptomatic, and that's gonna be hard to. You can't test that if you don't even know you're sick. I know there's a few professional basketball players here that got it, and they are completely asymptomatic. There's nothing wrong with them at all, but they tested positive for it. Well,
Yeah.
how many of that's happening? So now you've got people who are spreading it, and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother issue that I'm not a medical expert, and I don't know the answer to that at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's
So
why our numbers went from, we were stabilized, we were growing, but like it was 8 when I first came back to Hong Kong. 8 people were infected, and then it slowly climbed, and then we were hovering around 120 in the whole
yeah,
town of 8 million. That's like phenomenal, right? I was
yeah,
really
it's
proud of our
insane.
city because it took a huge community effort to do that. But
Mhm.
we had a lot of people who left Hong Kong because our schools had closed in February. And so then they started to get, they were in Australia or they were in the US or UK, and then coronavirus ramped up there. So this week they flew back to Hong Kong because it's so good here and we have such good medical care. So then they brought the virus back, and now we're
Right.
having that second wave, which is why we're at 273 cases today, which people are livid. So the government made this new law that anybody who flies into Hong Kong, from no matter where you came from, you are in a mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks. Doesn't matter if
Wow.
you came from a city that was clear or infected. So you have to wear, you get a smart bracelet right when you're at the airport. As soon as your plane lands, they give you a smart bracelet, and there's a app on your phone, and then it will track you through WhatsApp or another device. And if you break the quarantine, which 4 people got arrested today for breaking the quarantine, then you get 6 months in jail or a $20,000 fine,
Ooh.
Hong Kong dollars, so
Yeah.
like
So that's
2,500.
2,000.
But
Yeah.
whatever's worse, so they also
Sure.
got sent to, those 4 people today got sent to the government quarantine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are not messing around whatsoever. Yeah.
Well, some of the bracelets aren't really working, but for the most part, it's going well. Like it has to happen like this. Other countries
Mhm.
are just closing their borders, like Australia,
Right.
Taiwan, Japan. There's nobody can come in or at all.
By the way, you mentioned flying to a conference to Taiwan. How far of a flight is that for you?
I don't know, a few hours. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not very far.
Nothing. Yeah. Yeah. We can go lots of countries that are very close. Philippines, Thailand. It's, yeah, it's pretty nice.
I was gonna say, yeah, it must be. All right. So do you have any other advice before we wrap this up for my people here in the United States that perhaps are trying to figure out what to do?
So I'm a Christian, and one of the ways that I have been able to stay sane, and I think that God has told me really clearly to do this, is to just like be thankful, like name the things that I'm thankful for. And when I was reading, actually I have my journal here. I was reading in the Bible in the morning, and Psalm 59 was saying, this isn't really connected, but it reminded me of the approach we can take to stuff. The
Yeah.
enemies return at evening, snarling about like dogs, and they prowl around the city. But I will sing of your strength in the morning. I will sing of your love. You are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. So I think like being thankful for what you have, and also being thankful for what's difficult and for the
Mhm.
opportunity to have a difficult situation.
Yep.
Um, one of my kids is really hard to homeschool and to deal with. I have to, like, instead of like asking God to change her or change me, I really have to change myself by being thankful for her and for the struggles that we have. And
Yeah.
I think that it shifts your brain out of like the fret, because it's so easy to fret and be anxious. And even if you don't feel anxious, other people give it to you because
Yeah.
they just share their anxieties, and then you're like, yeah, it's so bad. Yeah, so be thankful.
I told our class in one of my devotionals, our theme verses for this year, our school is Philippians 4, 6, 7, and 8. And it discussed the idea of thinking on what is true, right, just, noble, pure. And I told my kids in that devotional that there's never been a better time to do that than now, to engage our hearts with what God has told us to do in a positive light, because if you turn the news on and you watch the news nonstop, it can really, really depress you and hurt your feelings and make you think of what you don't have. I actually read Psalm 91 yesterday, and it says this in verse 2: I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. And I focus on that last phrase, in whom I trust. And the question really is what are we trusting in? Are we trusting in our society, in our civilization, in our culture, or are we trusting in God? That's a really, when you have time to sit and think about that, that's a heavy thought, because often we think of, well, yeah, I trust God. But then we think, well, but I have this and I have this, I can do this. And what are we actually depending upon? So I thought that was another really important thought too.
But
That,
also keep in mind, like, I trust God doesn't mean I trust God to keep me safe and I'm going to stay safe and I'm not going to get sick. I could easily
right.
get sick. I could catch the
Absolutely.
virus and pass it to my family, but I still trust in God,
That's
right?
right.
Nothing is a
That's
surprise
exactly
to
right.
him. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And yeah, I think that's an important thing too. I think so many people think that, if they get this, that it's the worst case scenario. And, praise God that so far the numbers are showing, especially here, that if you are relatively healthy and you are in decent shape, you're going to be very sick for a while, but it's not the end of the world. And like you said, bad things do happen to good people. That's a reality that I think Christians need to accept and realize that God is still in control. He knows what's best for us, and that's an important, I think, thing for all of us to consider.
Yeah. And I think that the big takeaway that Sherman, my husband and I, and my class, we get is, before it was just us, we felt like just us out of
Yep.
school and doing this thing at home, like day after day. I'm like, weekends have never been so beautiful because I'm so sick of like homeschooling. But everybody in the world is going through this.
Right.
Nobody is the victim. Like,
That's
no
right.
one single community is the only one dealing with this. Like, it's across the globe. And
That's right.
how we deal with it is gonna like reflect on just who we trust. Yeah.
That's right. It's a great thought. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. I appreciate you taking the time to do this today again.
So
Take
nice
two.
to see you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to talk to you too. And
You're gonna send me
so
cinnamon rolls as like
uh,
thank you.
I, I'll send them. They may not be any good by the time you get them, but I'll be happy to send you one.
Maybe I should send you some.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Nice
thanks
to
a lot for
see you
doing this
again.
today.
All right.
All right.
Blessings to you guys in Mr. Perry's class.
Yeah. And I'll try to get you a picture of them at some point.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye.
Bye.